It's the Tim Constantine Show.
The Chamber of Commerce, up until, mid-afternoon yesterday, the Chamber of Commerce would have thought yesterday was their ideal broadcast for the city of Boston. And then suddenly, it all went terribly awry. There was one gentleman who was there who is the founder and director of the Mount Desert Island Marathon up in the great state of Maine, Gary Allen. Hi, Gary. How are you?
I'm very well, Tim, and I'm happy to talk to you.
Well, thanks for being here, and I'm glad you're home and safe today, and some folks aren't that lucky, that's for sure. Just an awful, awful happening yesterday.
Yes, it was, Tim. I just as you in your intro described it, the Boston Marathon is about as American as apple pie, and certainly, it's an iconic, an American event. It's the longest running marathon in the entire world, and it sort of typifies the American spirit, and held in Boston where it all began. I mean, we're talking Paul Revere, and so everything was just as you described. A beautiful day. The race went off without a hitch. The Boston Athletic Association, who hosted, put on a flawless event. Crowds were enormous all the way along. And for those that aren't familiar, the Boston Marathon is a point-to-point affair. You run from through all the towns coming in, and the crowds were 10, 20 deep. All along the route, thousands, I suppose hundreds of thousands of people along the route. Maybe
and if you're from New England, you're excited to be outside again. You've been holed up in the snow and cold all winter, and the Boston Marathon and the kickoff of the Boston Red Sox season are two of the things that really think, summer is finally on the way.
Exactly. So everything went fine. I recently did a run from Maine, here in Maine, to Washington, D.C. for... I raised money for Sandy Hook Elementary and the Wounded Warrior Project and the American Cancer Society. So I did the 700-mile run, and I actually hurt my leg on that run. So I wasn't in top form for the Boston Marathon, and I thought I wouldn't run that well, but it was important for me to be there, and my leg had healed enough so that I felt like I could run. So the run went okay. I was thinking I would finish in approximately 3 hours and 50 to 4 hours and 10 minutes, which is a bit off from my normal pace. So I ran along, and I ended up finishing faster than that. After I finished the run, I went into the VIP tent. The Boston officials are gracious and give me a credential, which allows me to go in the VIP tent directly to finish. I hung out there and then moved.
Now, and just so we can picture the scene, who is the VIP tent? Who's allowed to go in there?
The VIP tent is the elite runners. The African runners go in there, the elite men and women, race officials from other races, such as myself from around the globe, and people from along those lines. And so I hung out there for a bit after my run, and then moved to the media center, which was directly adjacent to Copley Square, about 100 to 150 at the most yards from the finish line. And so I went into the media center, and this is the area where the world's media gathers to broadcast and for print journalism and TV, radio, everything, and to relay the Boston Marathon to the world. And so I was in the media center, and a loud, violent, angry, very disconcerting explosion happened, and everyone looked up from their workstations with a kind of a worried look, kind of like, that wasn't right. And I kind of knew. I was like, that was not a car backfiring, or that was not a fireworks. That was big and heavy. I mean, it sounded destructive.
And in the moment, I mean, it's got to be hard to grasp, because obviously it is completely unexpected. So in the moment, are you scrambling in your mind? Are you trying to grab at anything in your mind? Oh, my goodness, what could that be? Or is there still an assumption, because we live in a reasonably civilized society, I wonder what that was?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think at first it was like that, we're in downtown Boston. Boston is safe and secure, and it's got New England values. That couldn't have been what I thought it was. And then the second explosion happened. They were only maybe, 10 seconds apart, but it happened. It was less audible, but it felt like it shook the ground as much as the first one. The building vibrated from both concussions.
I've traveled all around the globe, and I've been in Asia, and I've been in Africa, and I've been in the Middle East. I've been all these places, and while there are unique cultures, there does seem to be a general assumption by all those people that when they come to the United States, they're safe. It's, for lack of a better term, civilized. So, what's the reaction when you see when you're with all these other athletes? What's the reaction from people around the globe?
Well, you phrased that exactly right. These athletes were from all over the globe. Many of them had interpreters with them. Many of them don't speak English. And there were 4 athletes from Kenya, 4 Kenyan men. I don't know. I can't say that one of them won the race. I do know that Eastern African runners, placed the top 3 runners were from there. So I don't know if these men were the actual winners, but I believe so. And they were sitting quietly, respectfully, and they were bewildered and confused and visibly upset and shaken. Because in Kenya, the Boston Marathon is like the Olympics.
Right.
It's they take it very seriously. They have great respect for winning it, and when you win it, it changes your life. You're able to buy a farm or take care of your entire village, and I think that I was looking at the race champion and his friends that had run, and they knew that this was not a great victory, and they were stunned. They were saddened and stunned.
Now, I know, your point there is well taken. It's not about the runners anymore. It's not about the event anymore. It's about life and death. But it had to occur to you. I mean, at the very beginning of our conversation, you said, you know what, Tim, I've been hurt. I really thought I'd probably run between 3:50 and 4:10. If you had run in that window, you could very well have been there at the finish line at the time of the explosion. That has to go over and over and over in your mind.
Well, it certainly does, Tim. I think that, honestly, it's good that I'm stubborn, because I think I pushed my body probably a little harder than a reasonable person would have, and I ran a little faster than I really should have by any means, and yes, I easily could have been, especially because I run along the left side of the road. I usually hug the left shoulder of the road. It's just where I run. And both bombs were on the left side of the road. So I would have been running right along that edge. I did run right along that edge. It's not I would have been. I did run there. So, it is disconcerting that, I ran past 2 live bombs, presuming that they had been planted there already, and I assume they had. We entered the building in jubilation because the marathon had gone well, and we exited to a crime scene. There were ATF agents, FBI agents, hundreds of police officers, helicopters, floodlights, police tape, bomb dogs. Everything was scrutinized. We were all looked at very carefully, and we were quickly ushered to move away from Copley Square. And
right.
So, exited into a crime scene. And so downtown Boston, the Back Bay area, I went for a run there this morning, and it is a crime scene. You sense that. You sense, the 12 to 14 block radius. That entire area is cordoned off. There are National Guard troops on the ground.
Well, Gary, you're home now, correct? You're back in Maine?
I'm back in Maine. I just flew in from Boston. I literally just got on the ground, so I'm home now, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're glad you're back. Thank you very, very much for sharing your experience with us. We appreciate it, and I'm glad you're all right.
Well, thank you for having me on, and happy to talk to you anytime.
All right. Take care. God bless.
It's the Tim Constantine Show.